ABBA 4. December 7, 2018. ABBA establishes its presence in the heart of your presence. Silence. And now the time has come, the time when freedom comes to knock at the door of your heart, to show you, and demonstrate to you, what you are, and what you will never cease to be, beyond all being, and in every form. It takes place in your privacy, and it also takes place on the screen of the world, giving you the opportunity to see through appearances, through different social interactions, the illumination of light and the illumination of truth. Beloved children of the law of the One, the resonance in each heart of Agape places you, in many ways, in the heart of joy and truth. In this space without space and in this time without time, beyond any point or frame of reference, is the ultimate presence, that of which nothing can be said, but where everything can be lived. It is from this point of view, situated in the heart of your person, in this timeless and transcendent place that transcends all spaces, called the heart of the heart, giving you to assist, from this central position, the end of the game of creation, replaced by the eternal being. This is happening right now, in every atom that makes up your body, as well as in every cell. In the innermost part of the cell, at the level of what is called genetics, innumerable changes occur. Whatever the symptoms or manifestations, always bear in mind that no matter how easy or difficult this way of going through, you will inevitably discover the eternal self, because it has always been there. What has been called peace, beatitude, ecstasy, as well as liberation, is, in the end, only the truth of naked love, without subject, without object, and without dream. In this indescribable beauty, whatever you perceive of it in any sense, what is essential is simply this feeling of fullness that is lived in that instant. In that instant, the Holy Spirit is constantly infused in you, not only as something external to you what would happen to you, but in a much more just and truthful way, emanating from what you are, keeping you on the edge of being and non-being, spontaneously and effortlessly, in a totally natural way, giving you the opportunity to live what you have expressed today. And whatever the residues of fear of the unknown are, even through these elements of fear or habit, even through your residual beliefs, right behind that, there is this fullness, and at the same time the void. The face-to-face of the Alpha and the Omega, the ephemeral and the eternal, whatever their manifestations, whatever their nature, can only allow this eternal being, which contains all the dreams of creation, all the universes and multiverses, which brings them back to the initial moment of creation, where the self appeared from the non-being, within different densities, different frames called dimensions. The solving of the equation is being done right now, on everyone, I would say, even if they're aware of it or not, if they see some advantages as well as some disadvantages. And beyond any belief, as well as any perception, as well as any idea, there is only that, where you know you are complete, where you are no longer anything, within this world. Whatever their occupations, or functions, or roles, are clearly presented to them as something that is played out, and lived somewhere on the surface, and that did not allow them to return to the essential. Silence. The set of mechanisms that occur in each incarnated human brother and sister, whatever the varieties of manifestation, leads you, naturally, inexorably, to be permanently installed within Agape, where sleep no longer has any reason to exist, where form can no longer exist, where worlds no longer run in circles, to make you discover that in your presence and in your absence, in fission and in alchemy, there is only the same truth, giving you concretely the possibility to live what was called unity, and to recognize that in truth and in truth, we are all in each other, because all creation is inscribed in you. Because beyond having walked through the different parts and worlds of creation, beyond your person, everything is already done from the initial moment of creation, and only the illusion of time and space has led you to forget yourself. This oblivion within creation always responds to the will of light, which cannot be expressed through appearances. That is why you have always been told not to judge, not to discriminate, despite appearances, between good and evil. As I said, and as you'll live it, good and evil are only linked to the screen of the game, which is precisely a screen of your life, in truth. Silence. The result of Agape, which extends from presence to presence and from heart to heart, has taken place in this period of this year. It is easy for you, whether in the external vision of your life or of this world, or in your internal state and in your internal vision. It is the same thing. The Agape takes all space and all time, and that is what takes you out of sleep, and that is what leads you to the throne of your presence and absence, to effectively wash your garments, your auras, to wash all that you believe you are, by means of the white light of truth, leaving behind no good and no evil, but simply the evidence of love. In this, each of you, whatever you say and think, is exactly where it is best to solve your personal equation, and the dialogue between your humanity, your being and the absolute that you are. All this is in alchemy to achieve, as you know, the 3 in 1, and you will accept in an ever clearer way that not only can you do nothing about it, but also, the feeling of fullness, the living out of the bliss, cannot give rise to any questions. From the moment the last veil is removed, once you have washed your clothes, in the love of white light, then you will see, and live, this bliss in its entirety. What one of the major stars expressed, Moye, through her experience, led you to realize that the star sisters, and some elders, have left on Earth, resonance models that are now totally accessible to you, and totally liberated. Moye is present in her ship, and is always present on Earth, through what she has left, which is still alive, to establish and anchor the light, available to each of us, here and now, echoing and proving to you the reality of what we have declared to each other, that is, that we were in you. In this resolution of the dream, you will find that beyond that, all creation, as the remembrance of who you are, does not have to be sought, but simply revealed, by the silence of your presence, for absence to reveal to you what is behind the scenes, and behind all experiences of consciousness. Silence. Then you can only smile in this adventure. The dream will end. And you will discover that in the end, this has already been lived, not as something that happens again, but as something that overlaps, between the initial moment and the final, of the dream of creation. Whatever is manifested on the screen of your life, you are committed to crossing the screen, not by effort or will, but by acceptance, of absolutely everything that is passing through, and will not last. This is happening in these times, leading you to this resurrection, complete and conscious, in its entirety. Silence. Joy will satisfy you. The smile, in fact, will be less and less absent. In this there is nothing to understand, there is nothing to anticipate, you just have to be present, inscribed in the here and now, so that the Alpha and the Omega meet in the heart of yourselves. As you have seen, there are a multitude of symptoms and signs, both on the world screen and in your natural vehicle. Silence. Few of you who, during this last life, which sums up every one dream, all that you have had to face and overcome, from your birth, in this life, has only been directed to lead you to this moment in which you are, to the age in which you are, and to the circumstances of life which are yours. That is why we had always said that everything was perfectly in place, that everything was in order, regardless of the apparent disorders. As you can see, this experience and this truth, which you can only recognize even if you do not understand anything about it, will lead you, and is already leading you, to this ineffable. I also remind you that in this moment, and containing within your heart the totality of the created and the uncreated, you are free to resonate with any presence. Many of you resonate with the peoples of nature, with the galactics, as well as with those who gave you their frequency and vibration, who today assist you with their increasingly silent presence. As you live it, you understand that in reality everything that happens comes from nowhere else but yourself, and that in what happens to everyone, no matter how light, or how sweet, or how heavy, or how tried, the inexorable purpose is one. Silence. And it is in this that you recognize yourselves, until you realize, effectively and concretely, that there has never been anyone, and that the story of creation was only an experience. And may this experience, however beautiful and joyful as it may be to experience beyond this world, which, I remind you, where you come from, what was called the stellar origin, as the stellar lineage, the dance of the elements, the four Idas, the four Thes, merge into the primordial ether. Silence. You have no future but to return to the essence. You have no choice but to be Agape, no matter what you say, no matter what your conscience says. From the moment you live Agape beyond consciousness, the call was made for you. And it is your call and your response to that call that creates freedom, which in fact has never disappeared, and which we had forgotten, with the games of consciousness. Silence. You are called to perfection, you are called to the ineffable, you are called to your truth. Silence. The resonance of the heart, inscribed in the center of this human body, unblocks the last ideas, habits and resistances. Silence. For none of us, not even for the most reprehensible, it is ultimately what you have to forgive, to liberate the other, and to liberate yourself, through lightness and truth, from all those bonds and habits that we have all taken, by incarnating, into illusion. Silence. Remember that no matter how difficult or hard it seems to you what you still have to go through, this is exactly what allows you to be free. Whatever the suffering or the appearance, the result is always the same. It is invariable. It is the beauty of Agape, the Agape that consumes the last veils, like the last illusions, like the last interactions, from person to person, from country to country, or from organization to organization. It is difficult to understand, for the moment, and perhaps to accept, that there is a very strong resonance between the installation of your presence and absence, and the external chaos. You have always been told that the more chaos grows, the more opportunities you will have to find yourself, because this chaos, however difficult it may seem, is exactly what you needed to experience in order to understand the futility of creation, and the flaws of what was called consciousness. I don't need to convince you, I don't need to make you adhere to it, I just need to make you listen to these words, because they will reappear when the time comes, in the same way as in many of you, ABBA too, as you make no difference between who you are and ABBA, demonstrating to you the truth that everything is in everyone, in its totality. It is through this final scene that freedom is accepted, that it is claimed, even sometimes violently on the screen of the world, signing the irremediable end of all forms of predation, linked at least to habits, but also to the predation of an entire system, for the benefit of a few. But these few should not be judged, condemned, because I would say they had the wrong role, a little like Judas with Jesus. And yet, if Judas had not been there, who would still have the memory, or the testimonies, of the life of that whom was Christ? Today, each one of you is Christ, in truth, leading you there also so that you can be, within the dream, in all the roles and times that have been played, and that you have traversed in all the timelines, all the possibilities, within the dream of creation. Today you will understand what it is to stay still, through the ability to be something else, more and more obvious, to be Agape, to be ABBA in Agape. This is how everything is resolved and dissolved, because even if ABBA is in each one of us, ABBA is beyond any archetype, beyond any world, and beyond any identification. As I have had the opportunity to demonstrate, and to experience it with many of you, through what you call music and song lyrics, all this was already written, even before the first breath of creation, and that necessarily all this was accomplished in an instant, and in all possible spaces, and that being from everywhere, each of you is, today, completing all the timelines, and all the lines of creation. And what you can still judge today as contrary to life, what you might call the forces of the shadow, the dark entities that enslaved you, are nothing more than yourselves, at another time. It is not a concept or a belief, but it is the reality of what is to be lived. The only way to overcome all this is to accept to live it, and to accept to love it. There is no greater force than Agape. This is demonstrated at this very moment, in every circumstance of this world, in every interaction, as well as in every resolution. Silence. Being in silence, whether by decision or by the commands of the light, allows you to live the end of your dream, in the most ideal conditions. Everything we said, and explained, was ultimately intended to bring you to that instant, with as few obstacles as possible, with as few projections as possible, and with as few illusions as possible. This has been done perfectly, because, of course, as I have just said, all this has already happened. You just have to put it back, during this rewind. And to live this perfection, with more or less intensity for the moment, is more than enough to make you understand, beyond all mental, of all projection, of all past, of this ineffable that we are. Who could choose his life instead of the ineffable? Our sister Esther, Mananda Moye, illustrated it throughout her time on earth, and it was amply confirmed to you through resonance, which you call channeling. But in the end, there was never any channeling, because everything was already there, and everything was already in place. But you had to discover this, to help not yourself, but all those who slept even deeper than you. This was also the role of the stewards of this world, who are called in Sumerian Satan, or if you prefer Satan. All this has been played out in you, all this is already written, because I remind you that in Agape, which is your dwelling place, there is no time or space. Silence. The dream already had in itself, from its beginning, the end that was written in it. At all times and in all places, this dream in Agape finds its resolution for all creation, within the earth. And each one of you, really and concretely, has borrowed as much as possible. No life belongs to you in its own right, no great being that has passed through this planet is outside of you, just as the worst of your enemies is only inside of you. This is the miracle of one thing, this is the miracle of Agape. We're really one in the other, and the universes and the multiverses interpenetrate each other, as it was said, when the wing of a butterfly is broken, all the universes know it. Silence. And that is what is revealed to you. Whatever games you have joined in this life, whatever your achievements or losses, your pains or your joys, everything was done, long before, to enable you to awaken. To put an end to judgment, cannot result from an act of will, not even from an act of lucidity, but simply from the truth that is being lived at this moment. Many of you, in recent months, have reabsorbed innumerable essences. This corresponds to the reabsorption of the worlds and the end of the dream of creation. Even what, just a few months ago, seemed heretical to you, or a dream or a nightmare to you, is now the only truth you accept to live. Silence. Such is the majesty and intelligence of love, through its intermediary, which is the light. Silence. Therefore, you're invited to deposit, for yourselves, your final burdens and sufferings, at the foot of the altar of your presence, in the heart of the heart, where, from now on, the celestial Jerusalem is placed. Whatever the visions are, if they are confined in the vision shown by Christ to St. John, if they are without vision, without image, this is what completes the cycle of ascension. Silence. Therefore, it has been necessary, from the point of view of the history of this world, to achieve it on an extremely limited temporal scale in relation to the number of lives that most of us have spent on the surface of this world. And all this is being experienced now. And the more numerous they are in accepting this inevitable, the more they facilitate the awakening of the collective. As you see on the screen of the world, social and geophysical, on the surface of Gaia as in the sky of Gaia, there is the same evidence. The languor of Agape, as Manandamwe had lived and explained, gives you the opportunity to experience exactly the same scenario. Because this process, whatever the multiplicity of its forms, always has the same purpose. It is to make you find yourself, beyond any judgment, beyond any world, beyond any belief, beyond any story, even the most important in this world. Silence. So you could ask me, why life? What's left to experience? Nothing more than that. Just wait, not in expectation but in the plan that is unfolding, for the synchronicity of all humanity as well as all creations. All this is happening on Earth. The entire intergalactic confederation of free worlds is now as close to Earth as possible, as close to your heart as possible, emerging from its depths, showing you that this has already been recorded and reproduced. This puts an end, on a collective level, to the dream of individuality and the illusion of creation. Silence. Your Agape, your ABBA, and your love, all loves, in all their forms, from the most dense, thanatos, death, to the most subtle, Agape. All this has been lived, all this has happened. Silence. Remain calm as often as possible. The elder Esho had spoken recently of laziness. What can remain so vigorous, or as a possible action, when Agape is there? For many here and everywhere, they have sometimes expressed a form of discomfort or difficulty in assuming this period. But it must be said that for everyone, that Agape leaves you no choice, and that besides, you do not have to choose, because there is on the other hand, what is evident, what will never happen, you, Agape, and on the other hand, what has only happened. And as you know, everything that happens appears and disappears, whether it is your birth or death, whether it is a relationship of any kind, and that nothing, ever, within creation can remain forever, in the dream of creation. Silence. So it's a true understanding, because it's an intimate mechanism that's not tied to a vision, energy or vibration. It's the moment you accept that there's nothing to understand, that stories are useless, and that only what has allowed all this to happen is you. Not your person, not your story, but what is in front of any person, as before story. Silence. As you accept to be who you are, through the manifestation of Agape, you can only notice an ever greater and more constant distance, with what you called your life, showing you that you are not only your life, but also all lives. And this is how you experience what is in the order of understanding. This love requires no explanation, no questioning. What is still being questioned, and you have expressed it, is simply the difficulty of being both fully in your life from now on, in exchange for being fully life. And if you accept, it will become easier and easier in terms of what remains of your life. This will be light. You will escape the cycle of violence, the resolution of dreams, where everything is revealed. If you accept this, remain silent, respecting the mandates of light, respecting what you feel, and not what your head tells you, then you will serve, with such devotion that anyone else will become you, not out of morality or ideal, but as the only truth. This is at stake all over the world. Whether you know it or not, changes nothing. Silence. Whatever happens, in this world as in everyone else, they have to go through it, without being stopped, and Agape allows them to do it. Agape is the solution, everything else is just an illusion. You must divest yourself of all that you have acquired, of all that you have conquered in this world, to return the keys, with happiness and joy. If there is something to remember, and yet it has already been repeated countless times, everything happens automatically. You can only accompany, through the resonance of the heart, to install in a more permanent way, This Agape that is there, not only for you, but for the whole transition of humanity and creation. You have the opportunity to verify my statements, under any circumstances, from the moment you are hosting. And by embracing, and as you accept, Agape grows, giving them this indelible proof. Silence. So beyond my words, let me now express myself through silence, because indeed, and you know it, because you have experienced it, beyond the meaning of the words, beyond your understanding, there is an essential aspect that leads to Agape. And Agape does not need words, it needs demonstration, efficiency and truthfulness. And in this instant, whether you are here or elsewhere, let me finish my words, in this particular silence that speaks, to your heart, with the same vibration as my words. So I ask you to embrace what will resonate in silence now, for a few minutes. And it will be my way of greeting you, honoring your presence and recognizing myself in everyone. You only have to close your eyes, not move your body, and simply embrace, without expecting anything and without expecting anything, without any prior or preconceived idea. In this ABBA greets you. And now ABBA owns you. Silence. So ABBA retreats into every heart. May peace, joy, love and truth be in you, and may they be you. Forever and ever. Through Jean-Luc Ayoun. The Transformations. French transcript. Agape team. English translation. DeepL.com. Home revised, LMF.